Today, the word marijuana can mean many different things. For some people, it's medicine. For others, it's controversial. And for millions, it's simply a familiar name for cannabis. But here's the surprising part. The plant is thousands of years older than the word marijuana itself. Long before modern laws, dispensaries, or even written history, cannabis was already growing across the landscapes of Eurasia. And humans had already discovered that this plant could be useful in more ways than one. The exact birthplace of cannabis is still debated by scientists. Some evidence points toward East Asia, while other research suggests a much broader region across Eurasia. But one thing is clear: humans have been connected with this plant for thousands of years. Early communities didn't necessarily see cannabis as a recreational drug. They could use its strong fibers to make rope and textiles. Its seeds could provide food and oil. And over time, people learned that different parts of the plant had very different properties. So the story of marijuana doesn't really begin with marijuana. It begins with an ancient plant and the first humans who learned how to use it.
But cannabis had another side, and eventually, humans began to discover it. Thousands of years ago, cannabis wasn't only valued for its fiber and seeds. In parts of Central Asia, people were also using the plant for medicinal and ritual purposes. One of the clearest archaeological discoveries comes from the Yanghai tombs in present-day Xinjiang, China. Inside a roughly 2,700-year-old burial, researchers found a large quantity of cannabis. Scientific analysis later confirmed the presence of THC and other cannabis compounds. The evidence suggests that this wasn't simply a pile of ordinary plant material. It may have been used for medicinal purposes, for ritual practices, or possibly for altered states of consciousness. And then came another remarkable discovery. At a cemetery in the eastern Pamirs, researchers found wooden braziers containing chemical traces of cannabis. The site dates back roughly 2,500 years. The evidence suggests that cannabis was burned during funerary ceremonies. Imagine that. Thousands of years before modern marijuana culture, people were already discovering the psychoactive side of this ancient plant. But cannabis was about to travel much farther. And as people moved across Asia, they carried the plant and its uses with them.
As ancient peoples traveled, so did cannabis. Its seeds and fibers moved along with migrating communities and trade networks. In ancient China, cannabis became an important practical crop. Its fibers could be turned into strong materials for clothing, rope, and other everyday needs. But its history wasn't limited to China. Cannabis also became part of the traditions and medical practices of other ancient societies. In India, preparations made from cannabis developed a long cultural and religious history. And farther west, the plant became known among peoples of Central Asia and the Eurasian steppe. The Greek historian Herodotus even described a ritual in which Scythian people gathered inside a small tent while cannabis was burned over heated stones. Archaeological discoveries from the region provide additional evidence that cannabis was used in ritual contexts during this period. Over centuries, the plant continued moving between cultures. Sometimes it was valued for fiber, sometimes for seeds and oil, sometimes for medicine, and sometimes for its mind-altering effects. The same ancient plant was taking on completely different meanings depending on where it traveled. And eventually, cannabis would make its way into the medical world of the West. But the name we know today, marijuana, was still waiting to enter the story. By the 19th century, cannabis had entered Western medicine. Physicians in Europe became increasingly interested in preparations brought from India and the Middle East. Cannabis extracts and tinctures were used in medical practice for various conditions. But while doctors were studying the plant, its identity was changing too. Different cultures had different names for different preparations: hemp, hashish, cannabis, and eventually, marijuana. The word marijuana became especially associated with cannabis in the Americas during the modern era. And then, the 20th century changed everything. cannabis became increasingly associated with drug control and prohibition. Governments introduced new restrictions. Public attitudes shifted. And the ancient plant that had once been used for fiber, food, medicine, and ritual was increasingly viewed through the lens of drug policy. But science wasn't finished with cannabis. In 1964, Israeli researchers Raphael Meshulam and Yechiel Gayoni identified the structure of THC, the principal psychoactive compound responsible for much of cannabis's intoxicating effect. That discovery opened a new chapter, because scientists could now begin studying cannabis not just as an ancient plant, but at the molecular level.
And that's where the story comes full circle. The cannabis plant that humans encountered thousands of years ago is still here. But today, it exists in many different forms. Industrial hemp is valued for its fibers and seeds. Medical cannabis is studied for specific therapeutic applications. And marijuana has become one of the most widely recognized names for psychoactive cannabis. Modern science has also revealed something ancient cultures could never have known. The human body has its own endocannabinoid system, a biological system that interacts with cannabinoids. Research into this system has transformed our understanding of how cannabis compounds affect the human body. But the history of cannabis is not simply a story about drugs. It's a story about agriculture, migration, trade, medicine, religion, science, and changing human attitudes. From ancient fields in Asia to burial rituals in the Central Asian mountains, to 19th century medicine, and finally to the modern world, cannabis has followed humanity for thousands of years. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part. The plant we now call marijuana was never really a modern invention. Its story began thousands of years before the word itself existed. A wild plant became a crop. A crop became medicine. Medicine became ritual. And eventually, it became one of the most controversial plants on Earth. This is the origin of marijuana.